The telegram arrived on a Tuesday morning in September 1882, and Isaac Whitmore knew, before he even opened it, that his carefully constructed life was about to change forever. He stood on the porch of his ranch house outside Utica, Montana Territory, watching the messenger ride away in a cloud of dust, and felt his stomach twist with something between anticipation and dread. For 6 months, he had corresponded with a woman named Sarah Fletcher from Pennsylvania, a mail-order bride who claimed to be everything he needed: hardworking, God-fearing, practical, and skilled in all the domestic arts a ranch wife should possess. Her letters had been sensible and straightforward, which suited him fine. At 32 years old, Isaac had no time for romantic nonsense. He needed help running his sprawling cattle operation, someone who could manage a household and understand the brutal realities of frontier life. The telegram was short. Arriving Utica, September 28th, stop train from Helena stops Sarah Fletcher. Isaac folded the paper and tucked it into his shirt pocket, then looked out across his land. 3,000 acres of grassland and rough country stretched to the foothills of the mountains, dotted with several hundred head of cattle. He had built this ranch from nothing over the past 8 years, working himself nearly to death in the process. His nearest neighbor was 7 miles away. The town of Utica, such as it was, consisted of a general store, a saloon, a small church, and a handful of other buildings clustered around the narrow-gauge railroad that connected the territory to the rest of civilization. He had not lied in his letters to Sarah. He told her the work would be hard, the isolation profound, the winters brutal. He told her he was not a romantic man, that he could not promise passion or poetry, but that he would treat her with respect and provide for her as best he could. In return, he expected her to pull her weight. A ranch wife was not simply a cook and housekeeper. She was a partner in every sense, someone who could help with the livestock when needed, manage finances, preserve food, sew and mend, and handle a rifle if circumstances required it. Sarah's letters had assured him she was equal to the task. She wrote of growing up on a farm in Pennsylvania, of losing her parents to scarlet fever 3 years prior, of making her way as best she could in her uncle's household, until it became clear she was more burden than help with 5 cousins to feed. She was 24 years old, plain-spoken, and desperate enough to travel 2,000 miles to marry a stranger. That desperation, Isaac thought, was actually a point in her favor. Desperate people worked hard. Desperate people did not give up easily. The days until September 28th passed in a blur of preparation. Isaac cleaned the house more thoroughly than he had in months, fixed the broken shutter on the bedroom window, and tried to see his home through the eyes of a woman who had never been west of the Mississippi. The ranch house was solid, built of logs and fieldstone, with 2 bedrooms, a main room that served as kitchen and sitting area, and a small root cellar. It was not fancy, but it was comfortable enough, and it did not leak. He hoped that would be sufficient. On the morning of the 28th, Isaac rode into Utica well before the train was due to arrive. He wore his best shirt and vest, had trimmed his beard, and tried to ignore the curious looks from the townspeople who clearly knew exactly why he was there. News traveled fast in a small community, and everyone knew about the mail-order bride from back east. The train was late, as trains often were, and Isaac spent the time pacing the platform and second-guessing every decision that had led to this moment. What if she took one look at him and refused to go through with it? What if he had misrepresented himself somehow in his letters? What if she was nothing like what he expected? When the train finally arrived, billowing smoke and screeching to a halt, Isaac felt his heart hammering against his ribs. Several passengers disembarked. A cattle buyer he recognized, a family with 3 small children, a drummer selling patent medicines. And then he saw her. Sarah Fletcher stepped down from the train car with the careful precision of someone who had been traveling for days, and was determined to maintain whatever dignity remained. She was smaller than he had imagined, barely 5 feet tall, with dark brown hair pinned back under a sensible traveling bonnet and brown eyes that swept the platform with a mixture of nervousness and determination. She wore a gray traveling dress that had seen better days, and she carried a single worn carpetbag. She was not beautiful in the conventional sense, but there was something appealing in the straightforward set of her jaw and the intelligent curiosity in her gaze. Isaac stepped forward and removed his hat. "Miss Fletcher," she turned to him, and he saw her take in his appearance in a single swift assessment. Tall, broad-shouldered, sun-weathered skin, dark hair going gray at the temples. He hoped he passed whatever test she was conducting. "Mr. Whitmore." Her voice was softer than he expected, but steady. "Yes, madam. Welcome to Utica." He reached for her carpetbag, but she held onto it for a moment, her knuckles white. "Is there somewhere we might speak privately before we proceed?" she asked. Isaac felt a flicker of unease. "The church is just down the street. Reverend Palmer is expecting us. We could talk there if you like." Sarah nodded, and they walked in silence down the dusty Main Street. Isaac was acutely aware of the eyes following them, of the whispered conversations they left in their wake. Sarah kept her gaze straight ahead, her shoulders square despite what must have been exhaustion from her journey. Reverend Palmer was a kind man in his 60s who had married and buried most of the population of Utica at one point or another. He welcomed them into the small church with warm handshakes and gentle reassurances, then tactfully retreated to give them a moment of privacy before the ceremony. Sarah set down her carpetbag and turned to face Isaac directly. "Mr. Whitmore, before we proceed, there is something I must tell you. I should have told you before in my letters, but I was afraid you would withdraw your offer, and I was desperate to leave Pennsylvania. I am prepared to be an honest wife to you in all other respects, but I cannot start this marriage with a lie between us." Isaac felt his stomach drop. What could she possibly have to confess? A criminal past, a living husband, children hidden away somewhere. "Go on," he said quietly. Sarah took a deep breath. "I cannot sew. I mean, I can manage the most basic stitches, enough to attach a button or make a crude repair. But the fine needlework I claim to be proficient in my letters is beyond my capabilities. I have tried, truly I have, but my fingers do not seem to cooperate with the needle, and everything I attempt turns out crooked and unusable. When you wrote of needing a wife skilled in domestic arts, I panicked and exaggerated my abilities. I understand if you wish to put me back on the train, though I confess I do not know where I would go." Isaac stared at her for a long moment, so relieved that her confession was not something truly serious that he almost laughed. Sarah mistook his silence for anger and continued speaking, the words tumbling out faster now. "I can cook, truly I can. And I know how to preserve food, manage a household, keep accounts, and work with livestock. I grew up on a working farm. I am strong and I learn quickly. I am simply hopeless with a needle. My mother despaired of me, but everything else she taught me I mastered. It is only the sewing that defeats me." Isaac did laugh then, a short bark of surprised amusement that made Sarah flinch. He held up a hand. "Miss Fletcher, Sarah, if I may call you that. I need a partner, not a seamstress. If sewing was the most important qualification for a ranch wife, I would have advertised for a tailor, not a bride. Can you ride a horse?" Sarah blinked, clearly thrown by the question. "Yes, not elegantly but competently." "Can you shoot?" "A rifle, yes. My father taught me. I am a fair shot." Can you help me with calving in the middle of a freezing night? Can you manage the household finances and make intelligent decisions when I am out on the range for days at a time? Can you stand the isolation and the hard work and the fact that there are no other women for miles around? Sarah's chin lifted. Yes to all of those things, or at least I am willing to try and to learn what I do not already know. Isaac extended his hand. Then we have an agreement. I can buy ready-made clothes from the general store or trade for mending work in town when necessary. What I cannot buy is a partner I can trust. If you are willing to be that, then your skill with a needle is irrelevant to me. Sarah looked at his outstretched hand, and he saw the moment the tension left her shoulders. She placed her small hand in his larger one, and they shook on it like business partners sealing a deal. Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. I will not disappoint you. Call me Isaac, and I hope to do the same. The wedding ceremony was brief and practical, witnessed by Reverend Palmer and the storekeeper's wife, who had been fetched to serve as the second witness. Isaac placed a simple gold band on Sarah's finger, one he had ordered from a catalog weeks before. They spoke the traditional vows, and when the Reverend pronounced them man and wife and told Isaac he could kiss his bride, he leaned down and pressed a chaste kiss to Sarah's cheek. Her skin was soft and smelled faintly of lavender. They were married. Just like that, Sarah Fletcher became Sarah Whitmore, and Isaac had a wife. At the general store, Isaac introduced Sarah to Martha Gaines, the storekeeper's wife and one of the few women in Utica. Martha was a motherly woman in her 50s who immediately took Sarah under her wing, helping her select a few necessities and chattering about the local gossip. Isaac excused himself to load supplies into the wagon, giving the women time to talk. When they finally set out for the ranch, the sun was already past its zenith. The wagon ride would take over an hour. Sarah sat beside Isaac on the bench seat, her carpet bag and the packages from the store stowed in the back. For the first several miles they rode in silence, both apparently uncertain how to begin a conversation that would shape the rest of their lives. Finally, Sarah spoke. "Tell me about the ranch. How many cattle do you run?" Isaac relaxed slightly. Work was a topic he could discuss with ease. "Around 500 head right now, spread across 3,000 acres. I have 2 hired hands, brothers named Tom and Jack Morrison, who live in the bunkhouse about a quarter-mile from the main house. Good men, hard workers. They will be respectful. I have already made that clear." Sarah nodded. "What will my duties be? I want to understand what you expect of me." "The house, primarily. Cooking, cleaning, managing supplies. During calving season in spring and roundup in fall, I will need your help with the cattle if you are able. The vegetable garden near the house needs tending. There are chickens that need feeding and eggs to collect. In winter, we will need to ensure we have enough food preserved to last until spring. Beyond that, I expect you to use your judgment. If you see something that needs doing and you are capable of doing it, then do it. I am not a man who needs to approve every small decision." "That suits me," Sarah said. "I prefer to be useful." They fell silent again, but it was a more comfortable silence now. Isaac pointed out landmarks as they passed. The creek that provided water year-round, the stand of cottonwoods where he had once seen a grizzly bear, the rock formation that marked the boundary of his property. Sarah listened attentively, asking intelligent questions about water rights, property lines, and grazing rotation. The ranch house came into view as they crested a rise, nestled in a small valley with the mountains rising behind it. Sarah leaned forward, her first real show of eagerness. "It is beautiful," she said quietly. Isaac looked at his home with fresh eyes, trying to see what she saw. The house was solid and well-maintained, smoke curling from the chimney where he had banked the fire that morning. The barn was sturdy, the fences in good repair. The surrounding land was golden with autumn grass, and the mountains beyond were dusted with the first snow of the season. It was beautiful in a stark and unforgiving way. "It is home," he said simply. Isaac helped Sarah down from the wagon and carried her bag into the house. Inside, Sarah looked around with the same careful assessment she had given everything else. He watched as she noted the clean surfaces, the well-stocked pantry, the sturdy furniture he had built himself. She ran her hand over the table, testing for wobble, and nodded approvingly. "You keep a good house," she said. "I try, but I confess it will be a relief to have someone else manage it. My talents lie more with cattle than cook stoves." Sarah removed her bonnet and set it on the table. "Show me where things are, and then I will prepare supper while you see to the animals." They fell into a routine with surprising ease. Isaac showed Sarah the pantry, the root cellar, the water pump, and explained his usual mealtimes and preferences. Sarah listened carefully, asking clarifying questions but not challenging his established systems. When he left to tend to the horses and check on the cattle, Sarah rolled up her sleeves and set to work. That first evening was awkward in the way of all new arrangements. They ate the simple meals Sarah had prepared: fried ham, beans, and cornbread, and made stilted conversation about neutral topics. After supper, Sarah washed the dishes while Isaac sat by the fire and pretended to read a week-old newspaper. Both of them were acutely aware of the bedroom door and what their wedding night theoretically entailed. Finally, as full darkness fell, Isaac cleared his throat. "Sarah, I think we should discuss our sleeping arrangements." Sarah turned from the wash basin, drying her hands on a towel. Her cheeks were pink, but she met his eyes steadily. "Yes, you have traveled a long way and had a difficult day. This marriage is a practical arrangement, and I do not expect immediate intimacy. The bedroom is yours. I will sleep out here by the fire for as long as you need to feel comfortable." The relief on Sarah's face was unmistakable. "Thank you, Isaac. I appreciate your consideration." "We are partners," Isaac said. "Partners do not force anything on each other." Sarah smiled for the first time since they had met, a genuine expression that softened her entire face. "I believe I made the right choice in coming here." "I hope we both feel that way 6 months from now," Isaac replied, but he smiled back. The days settled into a rhythm. Sarah proved to be everything she had claimed: a hard worker, a good cook, and someone who learned quickly. She rose before dawn to prepare breakfast for Isaac and the 2 ranch hands, managed the household with quiet efficiency, and threw herself into understanding every aspect of ranch life. When Isaac suggested she learn to help with the horses, she agreed immediately. When a cow went into difficult labor in the middle of a cold October night, Sarah appeared in the barn in her nightgown and coat without being asked, holding a lantern and ready to help. They were cautiously friendly with each other, finding common ground in their shared work ethic and practical natures. Sarah appreciated Isaac's straightforward manner and his lack of pretension. Isaac appreciated Sarah's competence and her ability to solve problems without constant guidance. They were not yet comfortable enough for easy intimacy, but they were building something solid: respect and trust. Isaac continued to sleep by the fire, and Sarah did not press the issue. They were both aware that their marriage remained unconsummated, but neither seemed in a hurry to change that state of affairs. They were still strangers in many ways, learning each other's habits and preferences, feeling their way toward something more than a business arrangement. One evening in late October, as they sat by the fire after supper, Sarah spoke up. "Isaac, may I ask you a question, of course? Why did you never marry before? You are clearly a successful man, established with a good reputation in town. Surely there were women who would have had you." Isaac stared into the fire, considering how to answer. There are not many women in Utica, as you have noticed, and those few who are here are already spoken for or unsuitable. I spent so many years building this ranch, working from sunup to sundown, that there was no time for courtship. By the time I looked up and realized I wanted a wife, I was past 30 and set in my ways. It seemed simpler to advertise for someone practical than to try to romance a woman who might not understand what she was getting into. Sarah nodded. And have you ever been in love? The question caught him off guard. Once. A long time ago before I came west, she married someone else, someone with better prospects and a gentler life to offer. I do not blame her for that choice. That must have hurt, Sarah said softly. It did. But it taught me that love is not always enough. Shared goals and mutual respect may be better foundations for a lasting partnership. He hesitated, then asked, "What about you? Was there anyone in Pennsylvania?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "There was a man, a neighbor's son. We had an understanding, or at least I thought we did. But when my parents died and I had nothing to bring to a marriage, he found someone else. Someone whose father could offer him land and a good dowry. Like you, I learned that practical considerations often outweigh sentiment." "I am sorry," Isaac said, and meant it. "Do not be. If he had married me, I would never have come here, and I find I am glad to be here despite everything." She looked around the warm, firelit room. "This is a good place, Isaac. You have built something real and lasting. That matters more than pretty words and empty promises." "Still," Isaac said carefully, "I hope that our marriage may someday be more than just a business arrangement. Not immediately and not forced, but when we are both ready. If we are both ready." Sarah met his eyes across the fire. "I hope that too." November brought the first serious snowfall, and with it, a new urgency to prepare for winter. Isaac and the ranch hands worked long hours moving cattle to winter pastures and reinforcing shelters. Sarah threw herself into food preservation, filling the root cellar with preserved vegetables, smoked meat, and anything else that might sustain them through the long Montana winter. They were working side by side one afternoon, Isaac splitting firewood and Sarah stacking it against the side of the house, when Tom Morrison came riding up at a gallop, his face urgent. "Boss, we have got trouble. 3 steers down near the south fence, and it looks like rustlers." Isaac dropped the axe immediately. "How fresh, this morning maybe, tracks heading east toward the Badlands." Isaac turned to Sarah. "I need to go. We will track them and see if we can recover the cattle or at least identify who is responsible." Sarah nodded, already moving toward the house. "I will get your rifle and supplies. How long will you be gone? A day, maybe 2. Can you manage here?" "Yes, be careful." Isaac felt a warmth in his chest at her concern. He caught her hand briefly. "I will be." She squeezed his fingers, then released him and hurried inside. A few minutes later, Isaac rode out with Tom and Jack Morrison, following the trail of the rustlers into the rough country east of the ranch. Sarah stood on the porch and watched them go, and Isaac found himself thinking about her instead of focusing on the problem at hand. The rustlers proved to be a pair of drifters from Wyoming, caught red-handed by Isaac and the Morrison brothers trying to rebrand the stolen cattle. There was a tense confrontation, but faced with 3 armed men, the rustlers surrendered without a fight. Isaac recovered his cattle and turned the thieves over to the territorial marshal in the nearest town, a hard day's ride away. The entire ordeal took 3 days instead of 2, and by the time Isaac finally rode back to the ranch, he was exhausted, dirty, and worried about how Sarah had managed alone. He should not have worried. The ranch was running smoothly, the animals fed and cared for, a hot meal waiting. Sarah met him at the door, relief clear on her face but no panic or complaint. "I was beginning to worry," she said simply. "I am sorry. It took longer than expected." Isaac explained what had happened while Sarah helped him out of his coat and set food on the table. "At least the cattle are recovered and the thieves caught," Sarah said. "That is the important thing." As Isaac ate, he realized how comfortable it felt to come home to Sarah, to have someone waiting who cared whether he returned safely. It was a feeling he had not experienced in years, and it stirred something in him that he had thought long buried. That night, instead of simply retiring to their separate sleeping spaces, Isaac and Sarah sat by the fire and talked for hours. They shared stories of their childhoods, their losses, their hopes for the future. Sarah spoke of her parents with deep affection, of the farm where she had grown up and the simple happiness of that life before illness had stolen it away. Isaac told her about coming west as a young man of 24, determined to make something of himself, and the back-breaking work of carving a ranch out of wilderness. "You ever regret it?" Sarah asked. "The hardship, the isolation?" Isaac considered the question. "There have been moments when I wondered what my life would have been like if I had stayed in Ohio, found some ordinary work, married some ordinary woman. But no, I do not regret it. This land gets into your blood. The freedom of it, the challenge, I would not trade it for anything." "I think I understand that," Sarah said. "Even in the short time I have been here, I feel it. The vastness of it all, the sense that you are part of something bigger and wilder than yourself." Isaac looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not just his practical mail-order bride but a woman of depth and spirit, someone who understood the things that mattered to him. "Sarah, I am glad you came. Whatever doubts I had about this arrangement, they are gone now. You are everything I could have hoped for in a partner." Sarah smiled, and in the firelight she looked almost beautiful. "I am glad too, Isaac, more than I can say." Something shifted between them that night. The careful distance they had maintained began to dissolve. When Sarah rose to go to bed, Isaac stood as well. "Sarah, would it be all right if I kissed you, properly I mean, not just a peck on the cheek?" Sarah's breath caught, but she nodded. "Yes, I would like that." Isaac stepped closer and cupped her face gently in his work-roughened hands. He bent down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepened as Sarah's hands came up to rest on his chest. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing harder. "Good night, Isaac," Sarah whispered. "Good night, Sarah." But Isaac did not sleep by the fire that night. After Sarah had retired to the bedroom, he heard her voice, soft but clear. "Isaac, if you want to come to bed, I would not object." His heart hammering, Isaac entered the bedroom. Sarah was already under the quilts, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. Isaac undressed down to his union suit and slipped into bed beside her, acutely aware of the warmth of her body so close to his. "We do not have to do anything," Isaac said. "I just want to be near you." "I know," Sarah said. "But we are married, Isaac, and I find I want to be a true wife to you if you will have me." What passed between them that night was tender and a little awkward, two people still learning each other but willing to be vulnerable in the trying. Afterward, Sarah curled against Isaac's chest and he wrapped his arms around her, feeling something fierce and protective well up inside him. "Are you all right?" he murmured into her hair. "Yes," Sarah said. "More than all right." They fell asleep that way, and when Isaac woke in the gray light of dawn, he found Sarah still tucked against him, her breathing slow and steady. He lay there for a long moment, marveling at how quickly this woman had become essential to him. Winter settled in hard after that, with snow piling high and temperatures plunging below zero. Isaac and Sarah were often trapped in the house for days at a time, venturing out only to care for the animals. But rather than feeling confined, they used the time to grow closer. They read aloud to each other from the few books Isaac owned, played cards and checkers, and talked endlessly about everything and nothing. Sarah learned to help Isaac with the inevitable winter work, caring for sick animals, repairing tack, planning for spring. Isaac learned Sarah's moods and preferences, discovered that she had a dry sense of humor and a surprisingly bawdy laugh when she let her guard down. One evening in January, during a particularly fierce blizzard that had them completely snowed in, Sarah was attempting to mend one of Isaac's shirts. She was holding it up to the lamp, squinting at the torn seam with clear frustration. Isaac watched her struggle for a few minutes, thread tangling and stitches going every which way, before he took pity on her. "Sarah, just leave it. I will trade some beef to Martha Gaines for mending when the weather clears." Sarah sighed and set down the shirt. "I am sorry I cannot do this for you. It seems such a simple thing, but I am utterly useless at it." Isaac reached over and took her hand. "Do you know what I was thinking about today, while I was shoveling snow off the barn roof?" "What?" "I was thinking about how lucky I am. In the middle of a blizzard, with work piling up and winter still months from over, I was thinking how glad I am that you are here. Not because you can sew or cannot sew, but because you make this place feel like a home instead of just a house I work out of." Sarah's eyes grew bright with unshed tears. "Isaac, that is the kindest thing anyone has ever said to me. It is also the truth. I was not looking for love when I advertised for a wife, Sarah. I was looking for practical help. But somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you anyway. I probably should have said it before now, but I am not good with words." A tear spilled down Sarah's cheek, but she was smiling. "I love you too, Isaac. I think I started falling for you that first day when you laughed at my confession about the sewing. You could have sent me away, but instead, you made me feel like I was enough just as I am." Isaac pulled her into his arms, the mending forgotten. "You are more than enough. You are everything." They sat by the fire, wrapped around each other, and Isaac felt a contentment he had never known. The wind howled outside, but inside they were warm and safe and together. Whatever challenges lay ahead, and he knew there would be many, they would face them as true partners. When spring finally came, it brought a flurry of activity. Calving season was always intense, with long hours and constant vigilance required to ensure the survival of the vulnerable newborns. Sarah proved invaluable during this time, working alongside Isaac and the ranch hands without complaint, even when it meant being up all night in the cold barn. One particularly difficult birth required both Isaac and Sarah working together to turn a breeched calf. It was messy, exhausting work, but when the calf finally slipped free and took its first shuddering breath, Sarah whooped with joy and threw her arms around Isaac, both of them covered in blood and birth fluids and not caring a bit. "We did it," Sarah laughed. "We did," Isaac agreed, kissing her soundly despite their filthy state. Tom Morrison, watching from the barn doorway, smiled and shook his head. "You two are made for each other," he said. He was right, Isaac thought. Against all odds, a practical arrangement between strangers had become a genuine love match. In May, Sarah realized she was pregnant. She told Isaac one evening after supper, nervously twisting her hands together. "I think I am with child," she said. "I cannot be certain yet, but the signs are there." Isaac felt his heart leap. "Truly, I believe so. Are you pleased?" Isaac crossed to her in 2 strides and lifted her off her feet, spinning her around. "Pleased, Sarah, I am overjoyed, a child, our child." Sarah laughed, clinging to him. "Put me down, you fool. You will make me dizzy." But when Isaac set her down, he immediately dropped to one knee and pressed his ear to her still flat belly. "Hello in there," he said solemnly. "This is your father. I just want you to know that you are already loved beyond measure." Sarah ran her fingers through Isaac's hair, her own eyes damp. "We are both very lucky," she whispered. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the summer. Sarah continued to work hard, though Isaac became almost comically protective, constantly trying to keep her from lifting anything heavy or working too long in the sun. Sarah tolerated his fussing with good humor, knowing it came from love. In late summer, Martha Gaines came to stay at the ranch, brought by her husband who wanted to make sure Sarah had another woman with her as her time drew near. The two women had become close friends over the past year, and Sarah was grateful for Martha's calm presence and wealth of experience. Martha had birthed 6 children of her own and assisted at countless other births. In September, exactly 1 year after Sarah had first arrived in Utica, she went into labor. It was a long, difficult delivery that lasted through the night and into the next day. Isaac paced the main room, listening to Sarah's cries from the bedroom and feeling utterly helpless. Jack Morrison tried to distract him with talk of the cattle, but Isaac could focus on nothing but what was happening behind that closed door. Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, he heard a different sound, the thin, outraged wail of a newborn. Isaac rushed to the bedroom door but did not enter, waiting for permission. A few minutes later, Martha emerged, smiling tiredly. "You have a son, Isaac, a big, healthy boy. And Sarah is doing well, though she is exhausted." Isaac sagged against the doorframe with relief. "Can I see them?" "Of course, but be gentle. She has been through an ordeal." Isaac entered the bedroom quietly. Sarah lay propped up on pillows, her hair damp with sweat, her face pale but radiant. In her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. Isaac approached slowly, awed by the sight of his wife and child. "Come meet your son," Sarah said softly. Isaac sat on the edge of the bed and looked down at the baby. He was red-faced and wrinkled, with a shock of dark hair and tiny, perfect fingers that gripped reflexively at the blanket. Isaac felt his throat tighten with emotion. "He is perfect," he managed. "He looks like you," Sarah said. "I think he is going to have your chin." "Poor child," Isaac said, trying to lighten the moment because otherwise he might cry. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names over the past months, debating various options. "I was thinking James," Sarah said. "After my father, James Isaac Whitmore. What do you think?" "I think it is perfect," Isaac said. "Hello, James. Welcome to the world, son." The baby made a small sound, and Sarah adjusted him to nurse. Isaac watched, feeling a sense of wonder and gratitude so profound it was almost painful. A year ago, he had been alone, advertising for a practical partner to help him run his ranch. Now he had a wife he loved deeply and a son. His life had been transformed in ways he never could have imagined. Over the following weeks, Isaac discovered that Sarah was as capable a mother as she was a ranch partner. She managed the demands of a newborn while still keeping the household running, though Isaac made sure she had as much help as possible. He took over more of the cooking and cleaning, and Martha Gaines visited regularly to help with the heavier chores. Baby James was a healthy, hungry child who grew quickly. Isaac spent every spare moment with him, holding him while Sarah rested, talking to him about the ranch and the cattle and all the things they would do together when James was older. Sarah would watch them together, her husband and son, and feel a contentment so complete it sometimes frightened her with its intensity. Winter came again, the second winter Sarah had spent on the ranch, but this one felt entirely different from the first. Where the previous year had been about 2 cautious strangers learning to be partners, this year was about a family settling into the rhythms of life together. James was a good baby, sleeping reasonably well and alerting them to his needs with lusty cries that echoed through the house. One snowy evening in December, Isaac sat by the fire with James sleeping on his chest while Sarah worked on the household accounts nearby. The baby's small body was warm and heavy, his breathing soft and regular. Isaac felt a peace he had never known before. "What are you thinking about?" Sarah asked, looking up from the ledger. "I am thinking about how strange life is," Isaac said. "How one decision can change everything. If I had not placed that advertisement, if you had not answered it, if either of us had changed our minds at any point, this moment would not exist. We would not be here together." Sarah set down her pen and came to sit beside him. She rested her head on his shoulder, careful not to disturb the sleeping baby. "I think we were meant to find each other," she said. "Some things are just destiny." "I do not know about destiny," Isaac said. "But I know I am grateful. Every single day I am grateful." "So am I," Sarah whispered. They sat that way for a long time, the three of them together, while the snow fell outside and the fire crackled in the hearth. The years that followed were not without challenges. There were harsh winters, droughts, cattle diseases, and all the 100 other difficulties that came with ranch life. But Isaac and Sarah faced each challenge together, their partnership stronger for every obstacle they overcame. James grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved the ranch and the animals. By the age of 3, he could already ride a gentle horse and helped his father with small chores around the property. Isaac was a patient teacher, showing his son everything he knew about ranching and the land. When James was 4, Sarah gave birth to a daughter they named Emma, after Isaac's mother. Emma was a quieter child than her brother, thoughtful and observant, with Sarah's brown eyes and Isaac's stubborn chin. She followed her mother everywhere, learning household management and developing a surprising talent for numbers that would later make her invaluable for managing the ranch's finances. 2 years after Emma came another son, Daniel, who was as wild and reckless as James was careful and responsible. Daniel kept his parents constantly on their toes, always getting into scrapes and adventures. But he was also loving and loyal, and he had a gift for working with horses that surpassed even his father's skill. The ranch prospered under Isaac and Sarah's joint management. They expanded their land holdings, increased their herd, and built a reputation for quality cattle and honest dealing. The original ranch house was expanded to accommodate their growing family, with additional bedrooms and a larger main room. The bunkhouse was rebuilt to house the 3 additional ranch hands they hired as the operation grew. Sarah became a respected figure in the community, known for her competence and kindness. She organized a ladies' auxiliary to help new families settling in the area, and she worked with Reverend Palmer to establish a small school in Utica, so that children would not have to travel to Helena for education. She taught classes herself when the school teacher they hired had to leave due to illness, and she discovered she had a talent for teaching. Isaac served on the Territorial Cattle Association Board, helping to organize roundups and fight rustling. He was known as a fair man who kept his word, and his opinion carried weight in the community. But his greatest pride remained his family. Nothing mattered more to him than Sarah and their children. As Montana Territory moved toward statehood in the late 1880s, Isaac and Sarah found themselves involved in local politics, hosting meetings at the ranch and contributing to the discussions about the territory's future. They attended the celebration in Helena when Montana finally achieved statehood in 1889, bringing their 3 children to witness history. The children grew. James became Isaac's right hand on the ranch, a young man as capable and steady as his father. Emma married the new schoolteacher who came to Utica, a kind man named Robert Foster, and they built a house in town. She remained closely involved with the ranch's business affairs, helping manage the increasingly complex finances as the operation continued to expand. Daniel, after a wild youth that gave his parents more than a few gray hairs, settled down and took over management of the horse breeding program, developing a line of sturdy working horses that became prized throughout Montana. Isaac and Sarah grew older together, their hair going gray, their bodies marked by years of hard work and the Montana weather. But their love for each other never diminished. If anything, it deepened with each passing year, tempered and strengthened by shared challenges and joys. On their 20th wedding anniversary in September 1902, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. James was there with his wife Catherine and their 2 children. Emma came from town with Robert and their 3 daughters. Daniel brought his new bride, a spirited young woman named Alice who had grown up on a neighboring ranch. The house was full of noise and laughter and love. After dinner, when the younger generation had taken the children outside to play in the last warm sunshine of autumn, Isaac and Sarah stood on the porch together, watching their family. Isaac's arm was around Sarah's waist, and she leaned into him, comfortable with the familiar warmth of his body next to hers. "We have built a good life," Sarah said. "We have," Isaac agreed. "Do you remember the day we met? You were so nervous, clutching that old carpet bag like your life depended on it." Sarah laughed. "I was terrified. I thought you would take one look at me and send me back east on the next train." "I considered it," Isaac teased. "You were so small, I thought a strong wind might blow you away." Sarah elbowed him gently. "I have proven tougher than I look." "That you have. You are the toughest person I know, Sarah Whitmore." They were quiet for a moment, then Sarah said, "Do you remember what you told me that first day, when I confessed I could not sew?" "I said I needed a partner, not a seamstress," Isaac replied. "You gave me exactly what I needed most in that moment: acceptance. You made me feel that I was enough just as I was, flaws and all. That was the moment I started to hope that maybe this marriage could be more than just a practical arrangement." Isaac turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. Even after 20 years, he could still make her heart flutter with a look. "Sarah, you have always been more than enough. You have been my partner in every sense, my best friend, the love of my life. Everything good in my life came from that day you stepped off the train in Utica." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, though she was smiling. "I love you, Isaac Whitmore. I have loved you from that first day, even when I did not yet know it." "I love you too," Isaac said, and kissed her tenderly, 20 years of devotion in that single kiss. Their grandchildren's laughter drifted up from the yard below, mingling with the familiar sounds of the ranch. Cattle lowing in the distance, horses whickering in the corral, the creak of the windmill turning in the breeze. This was the life they had built together, a life rich in love and purpose, and hard-won happiness. As the sun set over the Montana mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Isaac and Sarah stood together on the porch they had rebuilt 3 times over the years, and they knew they were exactly where they were meant to be. The mail-order bride who could not sew, and the rancher who needed a partner, had found something far more valuable than either had sought. They had found true love, and they had built a legacy that would endure for generations to come. Inside the house, Martha Gaines, now in her 70s but still spry, was directing the younger women in serving dessert. She caught sight of Isaac and Sarah through the window, standing close together in the fading light, and smiled. She had been at their wedding 20 years ago, had seen them take those first uncertain steps toward each other. She had watched their love grow and deepen, had witnessed the family they created together. If anyone had earned their happiness, it was these two. The celebration continued late into the evening, with music and dancing and stories shared around the fireplace. The youngest grandchildren fell asleep in various laps, worn out by excitement. The older ones begged for one more story, one more song, one more dance. Finally, the families began to depart, back to their own homes in town or in the smaller house that James and Catherine had built on the far side of the property. There were long hugs and promises to visit soon. The house gradually emptied until only Isaac and Sarah remained, standing in the doorway and waving goodbye as the last wagon rolled down the lane. They turned back to the house, which suddenly seemed very quiet after all the noise and activity. Sarah looked at the scattered dishes and toys, the remnants of the celebration, and laughed. "It will take me all day tomorrow to clean this up." "Then we will clean it together," Isaac said. "Tomorrow, tonight let us just enjoy the quiet." They extinguished the lamps and made their way to the bedroom they had shared for 19 years. Sarah sat at the dressing table, unpinning her hair, and caught Isaac's reflection in the mirror watching her. "What?" she asked. "Just thinking how beautiful you are," he said. Sarah snorted. "I am 56 years old, Isaac. I am gray and wrinkled and worn." "You are beautiful," Isaac insisted, coming to stand behind her. He rested his hands on her shoulders. "You will always be beautiful to me." Sarah reached up and covered his hand with hers. They sat that way for a moment, looking at their reflection, an old rancher and his wife, marked by time and work but still together, still in love. "We have been very fortunate," Sarah said softly. "We have," Isaac agreed. "Though I do not think it was just fortune. We worked for this, Sarah. We chose each other every day, even on the hard days. Especially on the hard days." Sarah thought about that, about all the challenges they had faced over 20 years. The harsh winters, the financial setbacks, the loss of Sarah's uncle who had passed away 5 years ago, the illnesses and injuries that were part of ranch life. Through it all, they had remained steady partners, supporting each other, working together toward common goals. "I would choose you again," Sarah said. "Every time I would choose you, and I you," Isaac replied. They went to bed and lay in the darkness. Sarah curled against Isaac's chest as she had done for so many nights over the years. Outside, the Montana night was alive with sounds. The distant howl of a coyote, the rustle of wind through the cottonwoods, the soft sounds of the cattle settling for the night. "Isaac," Sarah said into the darkness. "Do you think they will tell our story someday?" "James and Emma and Daniel and their children after them," Isaac considered the question. "Perhaps. What do you think they will say?" "I hope they say we loved each other, that we built something lasting, that we faced life together and made it work." "They will say all that and more," Isaac said. "They will say their grandmother was a woman who traveled 2,000 miles to marry a stranger, who built a home in the wilderness, who raised fine children and helped build a community. They will say their grandfather was a stubborn fool who got very lucky the day you stepped off that train." Sarah laughed softly. "I was the lucky one." "We both were," Isaac said, and kissed the top of her head. They fell asleep that way, comfortable in each other's presence after 20 years of nights spent side by side. Outside, the stars wheeled across the vast Montana sky, and the ranch slept peacefully, a testament to the life two people had built together from a practical beginning that had blossomed into profound love. The years continued to pass. Isaac and Sarah grew older but never idle, always involved in the ranch and the lives of their expanding family. They celebrated more anniversaries, welcomed more grandchildren, and eventually even a few great-grandchildren. The ranch continued to prosper, expanding and modernizing while still maintaining the core values Isaac and Sarah had established. In 1910, at the age of 60, Isaac fell ill with pneumonia during a particularly harsh winter. Sarah nursed him day and night, refusing to leave his side despite the urgings of their worried children. Isaac pulled through, though the illness left him weaker than before. He was forced to hand over more of the daily ranch management to James, though he still insisted on overseeing major decisions. "I am not ready to be put out to pasture yet," he grumbled to Sarah as he convalesced. "No one is suggesting that," Sarah said, adjusting his pillows. "But you are 60 years old, Isaac. You have earned the right to rest a little." "I will rest when I am dead," Isaac said. Then, seeing the flash of pain in Sarah's eyes, he softened. "I am sorry. That was thoughtless. Come here." Sarah sat on the edge of the bed and Isaac took her hand. "I am not going anywhere, Sarah. You are stuck with me for many more years yet." "You had better keep that promise," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "I have no idea what to do without you." "You will never have to find out," Isaac said. "We made a deal 28 years ago to be partners. I intend to honor that deal for the rest of my life." And he did. Isaac recovered his strength slowly but surely, though he never quite regained the robust health of his younger years. But he was still there, still Sarah's partner, still the center of the family they had created together. As they moved into their 30th anniversary and beyond, Isaac and Sarah settled into a comfortable rhythm of life. They spent more time on the porch, watching the ranch operate around them, secure in the knowledge that they had built something that would outlast them. They took joy in their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, passing down stories of the early days when Montana was still a territory, and the ranch was just a dream. On their 40th wedding anniversary, in September 1922, another grand celebration was held at the ranch. Isaac was 72 now, Sarah was 70. They moved slower, but their minds were still sharp and their love for each other undimmed. Surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, nearly 50 people in all, they cut into an enormous cake and accepted the congratulations of their extended family. James gave a toast, his voice strong and clear. "To my parents, who showed all of us what it means to be true partners in life, who built this ranch and this family with nothing but hard work, faith in each other, and love. May we all be fortunate enough to find what they have found together." Everyone raised their glasses, and Isaac saw many damp eyes in the crowd. Sarah was crying openly, not bothering to hide her tears. Isaac pulled her close, not caring that every eye in the room was on them, and kissed her as he had on their wedding day 40 years before. 40 years, Sarah whispered against his lips. 40 years since you told me you needed a partner, not a seamstress. Best decision I ever made, Isaac replied. That night, after everyone had left and the house was quiet once more, Isaac and Sarah sat on the porch as they had done thousands of times before. The September night was cool but not cold, and the stars were brilliant in the clear Montana sky. "You ever think about that first day?" Sarah asked. "When you came to meet me at the train station, all the time," Isaac said. "I remember thinking you looked so small and scared, clutching that old carpet bag. I remember wondering if I had made a terrible mistake." "Did you?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. "Not for a single second," Isaac said. "You were perfect then and you are perfect now. Every day with you has been a gift, Sarah. Even the hard days," Sarah teased gently. "Especially the hard days," Isaac said seriously. "Because those were the days that showed me what we were made of together. Anyone can be partners when things are easy. It is the hard times that prove whether your partnership is real." Sarah was quiet for a moment, thinking about all the hard times they had weathered together. "We have had a good life, Isaac. Better than I ever dared to dream when I left Pennsylvania all those years ago." "We have," Isaac agreed. "And it is not over yet. We have more years ahead of us, more grandchildren to spoil, more sunsets to watch from this porch. And they did have more years, several of them, filled with the simple pleasures of a life well lived. They watched the ranch continue to grow and prosper under James's capable management. They celebrated more births, more weddings, more anniversaries. They took joy in each day, knowing that at their age, each day was a gift. Isaac passed away peacefully in his sleep in the spring of 1925, at the age of 75. He simply did not wake up one morning, and when Sarah realized he was gone, she held him close and wept, knowing that a part of her had died with him. They had been together for 42 years, partners in every sense of the word. But Sarah was not alone. She was surrounded by the family she and Isaac had created, by the legacy they had built together. The ranch continued, as Isaac had always known it would, passing into the capable hands of their children and grandchildren. Sarah lived another 5 years, remaining active and involved in the ranch and the community. She was a beloved matriarch, dispensing wisdom and love in equal measure. She spoke often of Isaac, keeping his memory alive for the younger generations who had never known him. On a warm September evening in 1930, Sarah sat on the porch of the ranch house, surrounded by several of her great-grandchildren who were begging for a story. She was 98 years old now, her body frail but her mind still sharp. "Tell us about Grandpa Isaac," one of the children said. "Tell us about when you first met." Sarah smiled, her eyes distant with memory. "I came to Montana on a train, a scared young woman from Pennsylvania who had answered an advertisement for a mail-order bride. I remember how terrified I was, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. And then I saw your great-grandfather standing on that platform, tall and strong and kind-eyed, and something in my heart just knew everything would be all right." "Did you love him right away?" another child asked. Sarah considered the question. "I do not know that I loved him right away. But I trusted him and I respected him, and from that trust and respect love grew, the strongest kind of love, the kind that lasts a lifetime and beyond." "What was he like?" the children wanted to know. Sarah closed her eyes, and she could see Isaac as clearly as if he were standing in front of her. He was strong and hardworking and honest. He had a good heart, though he was not always comfortable showing it. He built this ranch with his own 2 hands, gave me and our children a good life. But most importantly, he was my partner. He never made me feel less than equal. He valued my opinions, trusted my judgment, and stood by my side through every challenge we faced. "Do you miss him?" a child asked softly. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Every single day. But he is still with me in this ranch and all of you. Every time I see one of you working hard or being kind or standing up for what is right, I see Isaac. His legacy lives on." The children were satisfied with that answer, and they scampered off to play before bedtime. Sarah sat alone on the porch as the sun set, painting the sky in those familiar shades of gold and crimson that she had watched with Isaac so many times over the years. She closed her eyes and felt the presence of her beloved husband so strongly it was as if he were sitting beside her, his hand in hers. "I am coming soon, my love," she whispered. "Wait for me just a little longer." Sarah Fletcher Whitmore passed away peacefully in her sleep that very night, surrounded by family, loved and mourned by generations. She was buried beside Isaac in the small cemetery on the hill, overlooking the ranch they had built together. The ranch continued to flourish, passed down through generations of Whitmores, each one adding their own chapter to the story that had begun with a practical arrangement between strangers. But at the heart of it all was the love story of Isaac and Sarah, the rancher who needed a partner and the mail-order bride who could not so, who found in each other something far more valuable than they had ever sought. a love that transformed both their lives and created a legacy that would endure for generations to come. And on quiet September evenings, when the wind whispered through the cottonwoods and the setting sun painted the Montana sky in gold and crimson, the family would gather on that same porch and tell the story again of how it all began with a confession, a kind response, and the brave decision of two people to build a life together based on partnership and respect. A partnership that became love, and a love that became legend.